Hi guys, I'm Steven here with another how-to from PINKYS. So today we're going to be going over how you can install your own door handles and door locks on your doors at home. We're going to be using our Addy door handles and locks and our Air 5 doors. Let's get started with a few of the details that you'll need to go over before we actually get to installation. So you may be thinking of starting right here where we're actually going to be installing our door handles. However, we need to look up here at the top first. So with the door all the way closed, we need to look at the space here. We need to make sure that they're aligned evenly, within at most a 1/16 of an inch of each other. If they're a little unaligned, or one is a little higher than the other, there's likely a few issues that we need to address. Now these doors are perfectly aligned. However, if they aren't aligned, there are a few other issues that could be taking place here as well. Let's take a look from the side of the door to check if we have this other issue. So if we're looking at the door from this angle, we can see the gap on the top and on the bottom. Now those two measurements should be exactly the same. If one of them is pressed in while the other one is barely touching it or is even fully separated from it, that's a huge issue right there. It means that our door is likely not plumb. There's a few different reasons this could happen. However, it all leads back to whether or not your door frame is leveled and plumbed properly. So I'll show you what I mean by actually demonstrating what it would look like if one of the corners of the frame was not perfectly aligned with the rest of them. So I've unbolted one corner behind here from this sidewall, and I'm going to press it outwards to demonstrate what it would be like if the door was mounted properly on three corners, but one corner was just a little bit kicked out. So now, from this side view, you can see what I mean. In that right here at the bottom, there's a large gap. It's about a 1/4 inch, and at the top, it's pressed up firmly. Now what this is going to cause is extra tension on the actual latch itself of your door. When you're trying to close your door, you'll have to press in on the bottom and actually flex this door just to get it to close properly. And we don't want that, obviously, because that's not the way that it should be. If we had properly mounted our door, and this were now level and plumb with itself, we would have the perfect fitment all the way from the top to the bottom, and the door handle will latch properly. Again, if any of these measurements have more than a 1/16 of an inch between the two of them, you're going to need to look back at our how to level and plumb your door video. There are a few things that we can do to adjust the alignment here within a 1/16 of an inch, but past that, we're getting far above industry standards, and it's just not right for this door. If your door isn't sitting properly, it shouldn't be shutting. So we'll go back to the basics, we'll level and plumb the door, and then we'll move on to this step, which will now be much easier once that's actually taken care of. Assuming your door is leveled and plumbed, and you don't have any issues between the clearance and the alignment, we'll go on to the next step. So in the box of your door handles and locks, you're gonna get a few things. The first two things you'll start with are these tubes. You have the upper, which is the deadbolt, and you have the lower, which is the latch. We can actually adjust the length of this by turning it, making it a little bit longer, which we'll need to do for these doors. You also want to start with the deadbolt already activated. Once you have that, you place that with the cross on the lower side, going through the top, and then you'll place your latch inside, making sure that when it's pushed closed, it slides in that way. We'll get our respective faceplates and we'll put them on with the smallest screws in the kit. Now, we want to make sure we never use an electric screw gun or drill. We always want to use an actual hand screwdriver for every step of this process and for every time that you need to adjust anything on these doors. One thing that can happen if you tighten down some of these screws too much is that your lock itself might actually be a little bit more sticky. So you're gonna have to play with it a little bit and feel out where the hole is, how tight you should go, and then adjust it if the lock is too sticky. Next up, we'll take the exterior side of this door handle and these two extensions that will actually screw into this if you're using it on any of our doors, which are a standard of 2 inches thick. Some other doors on the market have a standard size of 1 inch and 3/4 wide. However, all of ours are 2 inches as a standard. Most locks will accommodate a 2 1/4 inch thick door. However, make sure of this before you try and install it on one of our doors if you decide to go with other hardware. These two extensions will go into these holes right here, and they only need to be finger tight, nothing too crazy. We'll go and get the other shaft that goes in here and the other side of this to put them together. For this part of the process, make sure that you put this side that has a hole on the outside and this side that has the latch on the inside. We'll sandwich these two together. So this part can be a little bit tricky actually. Both sides are not fully secured to the door yet, so you actually need to hold it on there while you go and grab the long screws in your kit. So now that we have our 2 screws, our screwdriver, and we're still holding both sides of the handles, we'll go ahead and screw in just 1 screw on this right side to get this a little bit more secure. So now that we have 1 screw installed, you're probably starting to realize that we can't actually get to that other hole on the other side. What we'll have to do is use the small Allen wrench that's provided in this kit and take off this handle. So now that we have this very small screw out, this door handle should just come off. Install the other screw and move on to the next step. These screws do not need to be their final tightness right now. They should actually just be snug enough so that you can keep them in place, but you can adjust them if you need to. Now we can move on to installing the lock itself. Make sure that both this post as well as this lever are both vertical when you're doing this. So now that the lock is flush with this outer plate, we'll get our other 2 long screws and install those as well. Getting this lock flush with the outer plate can be a little bit of a process sometimes. So be patient, feel around, and do those fine adjustments until you get it. This is really important for the actual usage of the lock, for the weatherproofing aspect of it, and just making sure that the whole thing looks and functions nicely. We don't want to just let this sit crookedly because it'll affect the entire function, form, and weatherproofing of this part of our door. Now we'll get our last 2 screws, install those, and then put back on the door handle. After that, this side of the door is finished. Now that everything is back together and working, we'll move on to the other side of the door. So for your dummy door, you may have to take a look at these handles and see which way they're facing. Depending on if you have an in-swinging or out-swinging, right or left swing door, you might have to change it around. It's going to be the same exact process as when we had to take it off of this door, where you just use your Allen wrench that comes in the kit and take it off that way. Switch it around and you're done. Once we've switched the handle to face the other side and be correct for our door handle, we can go ahead and put on the extensions on the back of this. And again, these just need to be finger tight. So we'll go ahead and grab the other side and grab our hardware and put it on the same way as we did the other. So now that our whole assembly is on and our handles are on correctly, we'll put on these plastic pieces inside of each inset. The deeper one will go in the upper hole for the deadbolt, and the more shallow one will go on bottom. So with this lower strike plate, make sure that you install it with this curved side ready to receive the other door. Now we have both of our assemblies on and everything should be working smoothly, but we'll do one final check just to make sure. deadbolt is rubbing up against one side of the strike plate, or if you need to pull or push the door in order for it to even get into the hole, then we can take a hand file and we can file down whichever side of the strike plate that it's hitting up against. We can only file down about a 1/16 of an inch from any part of the strike plate. Any larger adjustments that you need to make in order for it to work properly, and we'll need to make those adjustments to the door and the frame itself. We'll start this filing process by taking off the strike plate itself and getting our hand file. So now that you have your strike plate and your file in hand, you'll go ahead and file down whichever side your deadbolt was rubbing up against. So now that you've filed your strike plate, we'll go ahead and reinstall it on the door so you can check for final alignment. I'll put this on the door and we'll check again. Our strike plate is mounted flush and our door is closing perfectly. However, if you are still having trouble mounting your strike plate flush onto the door, take a look into the recess that you'll be mounting it in and see if there's any putty buildup like we see here. Sometimes in the drying process, a bit of putty will build up or drip down into this area, which makes it really difficult to mount your strike plate evenly. This is a really easy fix. All you need to do is get a razor blade and score the inside edge of this recess. The reason why we want to do that is because when we scrape off the putty, we don't want to peel the paint that's actually on the side of the door itself and not in this recess. So score that edge and then take either that same razor blade or a flathead screwdriver and scrape off the excess putty to make a flat surface. Once that's done, screw in your strike plate and you should be good to go. If you're still having issues with mounting this strike plate, a few other possible areas to adjust are the holes as well as the sides. These holes can be made larger by either drilling them out a little bit or filing them down on a certain side in order for the holes to align more correctly. However, you have to make sure that you don't make these holes larger than the size of the screw head that you're using to screw it into your door. If they're the right distance from each other, but they just aren't working because one of these edges is hitting the actual frame around it, you can always file this down. Any of these sides can be taken down a pretty good amount. On a wooden door, the area that fits this can be chiseled out and made to be larger so that it can fit that way. However, on our doors, which are made of metal, it's going to be a lot easier for you to modify this piece than it will be for you to modify our doors. And that's it for today. We've gone over everything you need to know about how to install your own door handles and locks on PINKYS doors. Follow along for more how-tos, helpful tips, and inspiration ideas from PINKYS.